Perfect. Thank you very much. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Piergiorgio Degli Esposti, and I'm assistant professor at Bologna University, Department of Sociology and Business Law. Today's topic is platformization and prosumption into the hybrid reality. Our talk today will be mostly focused on the theoretical approach of the sociology of consumption, and we will try to understand and decode platformization throughout this lens. Let's say we all know we are living in the global society. COVID-19 is the most evident example, and in consumption theory are common the example in which you can analyze globalization throughout the story of this t-shirt that physically flows from New York, Shanghai, Washington, DC, Texas, where you can grow the cotton, to Tanzania or somewhere else when the garment is abundant. But basically, the idea of globalization, as Ritter and Bauman affirm, is a transplanetary process or a set of processes involving the increasing liquidity and the growing multidirectional flow of people, objects, places, and information, as well as the structure they encounter. What's happening? Presentation crashed. Okay. I'm still screen sharing, Gillette. Okay, I will edit this later, okay? So globalization is a transplanetary process or a set of processes involving the increasing liquidity and the growing multidirectional flow of people, objects, places, and information, as well as the structure they encounter and create that are barrier to or expedite those flow. Okay, so that's basically the pre-internet definition of globalization, but I guess we have to say that nothing has changed. The only thing has changed throughout the internet evolution and development, throughout the Web 2.0, and nowadays throughout the global platform society, is the increase on the speed of this process, okay? So basically the idea is that what is happening way faster than was happening like 5 years ago, way faster than what was happening pre-COVID, as an example, okay? And as Gillette has emphasized in her presentation before, well, COVID-19, as an example, has been a great enhancer of what we can define a process of digitalization global-wise. The idea is that basically the digital society in which we are living in, by some extent, can be considered like a new form of modernity. If we consider under the sociological perspective and under the sociological lens, the modernity, the era in which bureaucratization, chain line production, and efficiency were put at the service of humanity, or at least at the beginning of the Western world, because of the triple revolution. So the scientific revolution, the secular revolution, and if you want, the political revolution coming along the French Revolution. Nowadays, we have an analog triple revolution that is driving us toward the digital society or toward the platform society. The social network, those are the words of Rain and Wellman in Networked. But basically the social network nowadays, we can correct it with the platforms. The internet and the mobile computing are the three macro revolutions that are changing our behavior, our social interaction, our way of living, consuming, having interaction, and behaving each other. Literally transforming our experience toward the direction, according to Bauman, of the networked individualism, so that nothing that while computers and mobile technology may limit our contact with those physically near us, but they also can keep us connected with other online, a new form of neighborhood, also defined as, you know, someone also defined them as weak ties that sometimes are weak, sometimes are even stronger than in-person contact. So this is basically the fundamental of the transformation we are living and we are perceiving in our context. Generally speaking, then when we are talking about platform, we tend to see the most evident aspect of platform, the infamous or the so famous GAFAM, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft, those that, according to Van Dijk, we are connected with, and we can stay more than 24 hours without being logged to at least one of these platforms. I can bet that every one of us is, of course, now connected throughout one of these platforms to their service, and they use this service in order to enhance, to perfect our life experience, our social interaction, of course, our consumption. Think about, of course, is not one of the GAFAM, but Zoom and the growing and rising popularity of a corporation that wasn't even known, we may say, or just known by some geeks in 2019, how this thing has become so essential in our life. And it's interesting how you can compare by a side the global growth of Zoom compared to the decrease during the pandemic and the lockdown of the financial success of our flight corporation or transport company, as an example. You know, because basically this platform make possible something that was forbidden by the rule of law. So social connection, social interaction, working, having a venue of any kind, and even marriage. Think about New York City has been the first city on earth giving the chance to people to get married throughout Zoom during the pandemic lockdown. And, you know, so definitely we are dependent to those platforms, but let's dig a little deeper to the surface. We are scratching, analyzing the platform context or the platform environment. I think that a great and inspiring article by Jean Van Dijk is Seeing the Forest from the Trees, Visualizing Platformization and its Governance. Well, platforms are not equal. We have always to remember that there are three different structures of platforms. And brilliantly, Jos Van Dijk used the metaphor of the tree, okay? So like we have the roots, we have the trunk, and we have the branches. And the roots are, what are the roots of the platform? Are some element of the Wellman triple revolution, such as computer hardware and devices toward which all of us are relying, you know, like maybe the Samsung smartphone or the Android environment that is, of course, owned by Google, or the iPhone, but there are also other smartphones, devices, the chips that are embedded in our devices, in our PC. And not by case, one of the first and main global economic consequence of the COVID outbreak is the global shortage of microchips. You know, and this is deeply connected with the importance of platform in general, the roots of platforms in general in contemporary connected society. Then, of course, there are data warehouses and center facility, internet protocol such as HTTP, DNS, TCP, and so on and so forth. You know, the internet exchanging point and the structural aspect of the internet that is very important. Those also are platform, or can be considered platform in our perspective. So we can say we have the global geopolitical aspect of platform, that is what Van Dijk considered as the roots of the platform. Then what we have? Then we have the most evident part of platformization. So we have what? Online retailers, social networking, every kind of social networking, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and blah, blah. App stores of any kind, Apple stores such as Microsoft Store or Google, just to quote three of the main global app store. But we also have to remember that those are not the only one, you know. Then mail messaging system search engine, payment service, online advertising, all these platform, web browsers, cloud infrastructure, all these platforms rely on what? Rely on the roots, and thanks to the root can develop their business. So this is the second layer of platformization. And according to Van Dyck, the third layer of platformization are the so-called branches. So sectoral apps and sectoral platform, all the platforms that sprang, that blossom from the GAFAMs, from the big five and from the trunk. And those can take different shape and have their peculiar feature on education, finance, news, mobility, healthcare, and so on and so forth. So I think that's pretty important to understand that when we talk about platform, we have not just to be focused on the trunk, but we have to rely firstly on the fact that there is an embedded element, the roots, that address to very important and fundamental geopolitical issue. Firstly, then we have, of course, the discussion we are facing nowadays and doing this cycle of seminar. And lastly, the future application, the future possibility that are given throughout the utilization of platforms of any kind. Sorry, my bad. The point is, and that's a point that becomes self-evident global-wise on right after the COVID-19 pandemic, we are living in a reality that is on a triple dimension. It's not just on a double dimension, as someone can assert, like we have the physical and the digital. If we think on to the consumption environment, this has been already self-evident because we have the physical consumption and the digital consumption. Like I just put a picture of a supermarket and Amazon as one of the global biggest retailer. But those two are not the only one model. The very interesting model, the very interesting element of the reality we are already experiencing, and we will experience furthermore in the future years, is the hybrid reality. So basically what the merging, thanks to the opportunity offered by platform of any kind, of the physical world together with the digital world. So like we can purchase something on Amazon and get picking it to the supermarket at the Amazon box. That's a very basic example of hybrid reality, in which the physical place of the supermarket becomes a collector point for a purchase you made online, or vice versa. You can make the purchase online and use the supermarket to have other form of interaction. Point is that our reality nowadays is hybrid. Our city, smart city, are hybrid because are a mixture of technology and physical social interaction. We are connected throughout Zoom, but also we have, luckily, we still have in-person interaction, you know. So the whole idea of our reality has to be thought and perceived more and more throughout the idea of a triple element that is made by the physical brick and mortar shopping, if we use just the lens of the sociology of consumption, the pure digital shopping experience, and the more hybrid brick and click shopping experience. Okay, the idea is something, somehow the idea of Nathan Jurgensen digital dualism, or the fact that there is no clear distinction between online and offline environment. That was basically a statement made in the first year of the Web 2.0, but nowadays our context is always being connected. I love to make an example. A colleague of mine, she is from the 68. She was an activist of that time, doesn't love social networking, doesn't love being connected on this platform, but sometime discussing we always say, she always argued that she can stay off the grid, let's say, and I always say that it's almost impossible. One day she comes to the office very pissed off and told me, well, I own your coffee because it's hard for me to say, but you are right. Today I was cycling with my bike to the office and the Google car crossed me and basically took a picture of me and took a virtual representation of me in that crosswalk. Even if my face is pixelized and my privacy is protected and whatever you want, you know, we can't escape being into this context in which the so-called augmented reality, you know, is the dominant part. Basically, in the idea I like most of the augmented reality is that is a two-edged phenomenon. Like, of course, you have the physical world that is enhanced by the digital, but also vice versa. The digital is enhanced by the physical, you know. So basically, this is, I think, the main challenge sociology of consumption, firstly, but not just them. Sociologists in general, I think, have to address. My perspective and my studies are mostly connected to the idea of prosumption, and I've prepared a quick slide with a fundamental literature, basically, on what can be defined as prosumption and who invented the word. We own the term prosumption by Alvin Toffler in his third wave, 1980, where basically he affirmed that there are three main economics wave: the agricultural wave, then the industrial wave, then the third wave is the communication wave, in which the prosumer will arise. The prosumer, basically, the term prosumer is emerging. It's a crisis between the producer and consumer. And in the context of the platform society, we all are prosumer. We are fueling throughout our labor. Someone are not so keen using the term labor for people engaging social interaction in the platform, but we may say labor, free labor, voluntary activity, participation, doesn't matter. We all engaging to the process of increasing of value of the platform. And then another element very important in the prosumer literature is George Ritter and McDonaldization, like the fast food industry basically literally put the consumer to work because made it necessary for the customer to carry on some activity in order to have a better service or to let the system work. And nowadays we are completely embedded into this context, like IKEA, or every time we will go in a supermarket, or we presume and we are put at work when we are on Amazon, Facebook, whatever website you want. Then Philip Kotler, that's a marketing guru. He tends to see the prosumer as a movement, and also I particularly like the neo-Marxistic approach proposed by Christian Fuchs that literally considered the alienation and the exploitation of the prosumer on the platform, because I mean, we take advantage of having better service, but we do not have any direct economic advantage as long as we will become gig workers. But if we become gig workers, then we'll be exploited on another dimension, as Gillette emphasized in her presentation before, you know. Then we have the element of the convergence culture, because on the platform, the prosumer, or in the terms of Henry Jenkins, the fan, can own or claim their own power. Because if we are considered to being the fuel of this platform economy, we also have some power, and we should probably somehow claim some form of different treatment, economic treatment, awareness about our privacy, or like Anne was brilliantly emphasizing yesterday, opening the black box in which our information, our data are harvested and utilized. The remix culture is another core element of the prosumer literature, and of course, last but not least, the prosumer capitalism and the so-called collaborative economy or sharing economy. The hypothesis of this contribution is that if production and consumption can't be considered anymore two separate logic unit, they are part of the same logical unit of the continuum of the prosumer. So by a side, if we move to the left of the arrow, we tend to be prosumer that mostly produce and consume less. By the other side, we tend to be more consumer than producer, but doesn't matter the degree in which you are involved in the process. Point is, you are involved in the process. With this, as a matter of fact, we are encompassing a contradiction. And the contradiction is that we are both subject and object in the discourse. I mean, we are subject because we can claim power, we can claim form of empowerment, but by the other side, by the other end, we are also exploited by the platform because they make revenue throughout our social interaction, because they use our own data and resell our information, because basically we are literally fueling this economy without getting any form of economic reward, or let's say very little economic reward for the value creation that is embedded into this process. The idea, and we are coming back to George Ritter, is that we have some form of prosumer capitalism, according to Ritter, that are the fact that we do not own our means of prosumption, and that we have at the middle of the continuum the so-called balanced production and consumption. So like, let's imagine a situation in which you use a platform, take an economic advantage about using this platform, and you can make out a living, as an example. By the other side, so to the right side of the arrow, instead you have the production as a consumption. So like, you use the platform, but you are mostly a consumer than a producer. We use IKEA platform, augmented reality IKEA platform as an example, or we use Facebook and Amazon, but we mostly consume. So we purchase product and we give for free our personal data in order to be segmented by marketing advertisement or other economical proposal. The other side, so the left side of the prosumer capitalism continuum, is the production as prosumption. So like, we produce information, we find a way to resell those information and make out a living out of that. Let's say that how can we, and that's I can imagine that this contribution, my presentation now looks like pretty utopic and very theoretical at the moment. So, but the point is, how can we somehow find a way to create a form of resistance of platform, given for granted that we already are embedded in those platforms and we can't escape them? You know, there are probably two classical sociological notions that can help us in order to find a way, find the path, in order to have a smarter way to be present and to interact along in this platform. One is the creative distraction. As you know, every technology adopted in a context get its transformation, and throughout the use put by side the older technology. I mean, the behavior of people doing their own business hasn't changed because of the media. Look at this picture in which people are reading newspaper waiting for a car, and people at the metro station checking for the news. You know, what is changing? I mean, the only thing is changing is the pace of the evolution, the pace and the speed of the news flow. Nothing than that. And the problem is that nowadays, we as human can't keep the peace of the technological evolution, and we can keep the peace of the diffusion of the news in general. That's basically one element. The second element is the cultural lag. Like every technology takes times, and so the piece of the evolution I was talking about before is that the fact that a technology takes time to be adopted, takes time to be learned and used. Everything now on the platform looks easy, looks customer friendly, looks engaging, and we are doing video editing on TikTok. We are doing video editing in our story of Instagram or whatever, acquiring skill that we don't even realize we literally own. Sometimes when I see CV of some of my students, and you can notice like expertise such as video editing or element like using social media looks weird, but they are completely embedded in this context. The point is that the technological evolution is too fast compared to the pace we can keep on getting used to it. I would like to conclude my presentation with a proposal, that is the idea that the idea of the digital prosumer empowered in the platform society is somehow held by four main pillars. And those main pillars are basically the brandtopia, the cyber utopia, the Californication or Californic ideology, and the ecotopia. Let's briefly see what are these elements. The brandtopia is the fact that nowadays brands have become central in nowadays life. So we are analyzing the famous GAFAM as platform with the technological feature, but we also have to always remember there are also brands. Okay, and because of that, they have semiotic meaning and impact on the cultural creation process. Then the cyber utopia. The cyber utopia is basically the Silicon Valley mantra throughout which technology can be interpreted as a secular religion. You know, no matter what is the problem, technology will find a solution for that. And that's why we rely on platform. Arousing also, I think, some social justice problem and social justice issue we have to address. You know, think about the super rich exploring the space nowadays, the super rich space race. So Elon Musk, Branson, or I'm missing at the moment the Amazon owner. So can you help me, Gillette? Jeff Bezos, correct. You know, those have the solution for everything. They need to go to space. They can spend billion going to space, but of course can fix problems such as basic income or fundamental basic income or wealth provided for the citizens of their country, or even of our country in case. Then we have what? The Californian ideology or the Californication, that is the Silicon Valley mantra of the substitution of the nation state with the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur, so the neoliberalism political approach, and last but not least, the ecotopia. So basically the fact that our development model has to be sustainable, and we have to find technological opportunity in order to produce social development throughout the adoption of eco-sustainable technology. This led us to identify 4 elements of the prosumer agency, and the prosumer agency is made by being makers, so people that can literally interact physically speaking, modifying codes or modifying some physical element like 3D printing stuff, thanks to the sharing of project online. In Italy has been pretty popular during the COVID-19 pandemic, readapting scuba mask with a 3D piece printed in order to let the scuba mask fit to a ventilator in hospital, because there was a shortage of ventilator and mask in hospital. Then we have what prosumer has meant as sharers, so people that do as a main activity of being prosumer, enhancing their capability of sharing. Think about the influencer as an example. For them being a connector and having huge visibility and capability to share information is being part, it's a way of participating the digital platform economy. Then we have the fixer, that are those who tend to fix a problem that are present in our society. The example made before by the makers realizing a plastic piece to be applied to scuba mask can be at the edge between makers and fixer, tester and share. And because the idea, the concept behind these four elements of the prosumer agency is the fact that all these elements are interconnected within a same logic continuum. Lastly, we have the testers, so people that tend to what? To test everything they are connected. Think about the fact that nowadays most of the economic corporation use the consumer as a tester, reselling them products that are perfectible, that need constant update, that need some kind of maintenance, and that need to be somehow always fixed and tested by the consumer firstly, then by the producer itself, basically shortening the gap between production and consumption, and basically reinforcing the power of the notion of the prosumer into the digital platform society. So thank you very much for your attention. Hope to have been clear enough and quite engaging to you as an audience. Thank you very much, and I will be very pleased if there are questions you wish to address. Let me stop share the screen.
Yes. Thank you, Pierre. I think while people are formulating their questions very quickly, I think I'd like the last aspect that you covered, where you were looking at the prosumer's agency in terms of four intersecting categories. So just as a provocation, because one of the elements that you raised in your presentation was that the prosumers are being put to work without having access to the value that is being generated here. Do you, like in your mind, when you look at these four types of agents, four types of prosumers, do you think that when we move towards sort of getting that value back to the prosumers, will there be a differential spread of that value amongst these four categories? What do you anticipate?
Well, according to the research I made, there should be this difference of spread of value. Let's just think about of the sharers. I mean, every one of us is a sharer, but if you are an influencer, you can make out a lot of money, so you tend to be a PAP under the prosumer continuum. And so I think of one of the most famous Italian influencer, Chiara Ferragni, just to give an example. She is a fashion blogger, and she basically has literally become a corporation. Okay, and so it's a platform. She has become a marketing platform, but and so she find the right tool. She has the right knowledge, the right tool, the right. She applied correctly the whole element in order to succeed throughout this process. But if we calculate how many fashion blogger or people wishing to be influencer in that field, what we notice is that there is a very unequal and uneven process, because everyone, just because has a presence on a social platform, can be considered by some extent an influencer. okay? Theoretically speaking, I'm saying. The point is that break-even point is hard to be reached. And as long as you do not reach this break-even point, you are just exploited by the platform, even if you produce value by them. And if the platform doesn't have you as a listener, as an act, but not just as a listener, as an active prosumer, the platform could even afford to create the big global influencer, you know, and couldn't even realize and apply its own power. I mean, this is just an example that jumped in my mind. And I think that probably if we used to use the Marxian word and the Marxian notion, what is needed at the moment is a social consciousness of being prosumer. That's basically the point. And probably with the social consciousness of being engaged into this double trick, I define it as a contradiction of being subject and object, that probably we can somehow rise and ask for more equal opportunity on the platform. Because to my end, I'm little interested in how you can resell better product or not, but how you can grant more opportunity to people in general. We are relying on private corporation platform because of COVID-19, just to give an example again, to the education of our child, to education of the future generation, because any of that is hosted on a Microsoft or on a Google platform. That's the point, you know, just to give you an example. And so things are getting complicated. If we wish to quote Dana Boyd, you know, it's complicated. That's a point. But I think even if the speed, the technological evolution speed is so fast and so pushing, we can still have the chance to find a form of resistance throughout the so-called digital humanities and arising awareness. That's the challenge that we as scholars and as activists have to take at the moment. Rising awareness upon the problem, because we have also to remember that the vast majority of users of platform don't even know what a platform is, or don't even realize being stuck on a platform or a walled garden. That's basically the point.
It reminds me of my interactions with some students, you know, and I said, look, you know, you're doing all this work for platforms. The response is, yes, so what? You know, how can we expect the platform to actually pay us for what we're doing? That would be, so it's really accepted as a state of being. And that's a very important point. I have a couple of other questions, but maybe let me see if there are questions from the people who have been attending the talk. Yes, Rajarshi, please go ahead.
Thank you, Pierre, for that talk. So I have a brief comment to make. When you spoke about the social consciousness and the rise of that, right? I think we have a challenge there because the way, even in Marxian terms, we thought things will transform into an industrial society. But the majority of the world has not yet transformed into an industrial society. And we are here at the brink where everybody has access to this kind of internet and gadget. But so it, at least in India, what I see, it's a mixture, and what Marx would call a social formation. There are feudal ties still there. There are these informal markets, and there is this industrialization that is also going. But one point that is very interesting right now, and I think from that same lens, is so capitalism is always diseased with this kind of overproduction. But I think this is the first time with this kind of a content creation that it is acting in their own advantage. Because exactly as you mentioned, there are these network effects that are there. There is this targeted marketing that's being happening. So even with the creation of content, what we see is this complete deep prioritization that's happening. And everybody is participating. If we see TikTok and the user base of TikTok, we cannot say that it is the middle class or the upper middle class. Even a person who might not have a minimum wage might be participating. So there's a contradiction there. And we think now he thinks or she thinks himself or herself as a worker, as a content creator. So how does one realize their class position or even gender position, whatever the status is that we think about that? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. And yeah, I agree 100% with your point. And I think that basically the main problem is that global wise, everyone or almost everyone, we have also to remember that there are some area of the planet that it's basically technically impossible to be connected to the internet, but basically everyone is engaged in this stream of communication, and no one is basically taking the problem toward which where are we flowing to. We are just flowing and just doing stories, posting, chatting, and so on and so forth. Okay, and basically this is the idea, and we are becoming always more dependent on that. And like Gillette said, emphasized, like, and we can say even, and so what? That's our reality. We can't come back anymore, you know. And it's also kind of difficult to regulate somehow the behavior and the policies of certain platforms. I think the challenge again should be probably should be addressed probably thinking again to the Van Dijk platform tree. We have a triple dimension we to take in consideration. The roots, and this is a geopolitical problem. I mean, nation states have somehow to regulate process happening at the roots level of the platform. Then we have what? Then we have a communication marketing problem on the trunk. That is, and this is global. We are all engaged into this. We are following more or less the same model. And then we have the third dimension, the branches, that is the local specificity, you know, in which there are some amazing and super interesting evidence in your country, such as in our country or wherever, you know. So the local adoption and transformation of the global practice on the local scale, I think, throughout what are the behavior happening throughout the system of payment, as an example, or on throughout other direction. So basically, the problem has to be taken through a triple approach. That is, of course, political, social, and yeah, of course, even under the marketing aspect. Okay. Thank you for your question, comment.
I think Benedetta has a comment. Go ahead, Benedetta.
Benedetta, can you hear us?
Yes, I just wrote my comment in the chat.
Okay, I will read it. Okay.
Okay.
About being a prosumer in a hybrid reality. The new Apple Apps Health has the goal to connect the patient directly to doctor and using collected data for medical research. Someone think that data, blood oxygen, ECG, and so on by Apple Watch can help spot new COVID-19 cases. Well, let's say that point is that a corporation and an American corporation at the moment that is also a platform owns biometric and health information of I don't know exactly figures, but I'm talking grossly 1/3 of global population. That's a point, you know. That's scary because of course there are some public outcome that can come from the adoption of certain technologies, devices, application, and so on and so forth. But by the other hand, we still are somehow connected into the fact that nation state have to rely on global corporation infrastructure Otherwise, they can't basically handle the management of some or several public services. Think about public transportation without Google Maps as an example. Most of the cities on Earth are using Google Maps in order to track their buses and the efficiency of the public transportation. We definitely have to sit on a table with those subjects, and basically the point is we have to rebalance power. We have to rebalance power in order to go toward the citizen interest and not the customer interest, probably. Yeah.
Thank you, Pierre. I think we have two more questions. First from Katerina, and then we'll go on to Kalpesh. Katerina has also left a question in the chat.
Yeah, Katerina posted a question about Alexander Ocasio-Cortez address with the tax the rich embossed on, and yeah, that makes sense. It's a very spectacular way of doing protest and arising awareness upon topics that is possible. Think about that. It's possible. Again, think about the double contradiction, you know. That's a powerful move. Everyone on Earth has known about that because of what? Social media, thanks to Facebook, Instagram, and so on and so forth. You know, so and those are part of the reach we are talking about. So the idea is that, again, we are facing what the Greek called a paradox. We have to rely to those system of communication and diffusion of culture and knowledge that are pretty important. We have to rely on that, but at the same time, we are exploited by that. So it's a tough challenge. That's what I can say. It's a tough challenge.
Katerina, would you like to respond? Some follow-up question, perhaps? Okay, while Katerina is trying to do that, maybe we can. Oh, all right. Kalpesh has a question for you. Go ahead, Kalpesh.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Thank you, Professor, for the great talk. Actually, I have a question regarding. I was thinking on the concept of creative destruction given by the Joseph Schumpeter, and I was thinking in terms of, for instance, like I have started exploring field around. Like I'm exploring the aspects of finance in the field. So when I'm talking to the people and exploring the financial history, it becomes difficult to ask questions related to from where do you borrow, how much did you borrow, how much is your outstanding. But when, like I was thinking, then when these apps are collecting this information, people easily give up this information. So I was thinking that because there is no like personal relationship with that app, or there is no human face, people are actually submitting their information to this app. So the question is, okay, I have some more example. So like when I've seen the people who are doing some businesses like the Marwadis and all, they don't use so much this platform. They mainly make transactions through the banks, and they don't use Amazon and all these apps so frequently as the middle class and the lower class does. So I was thinking, is it the class that determines the process of presumption and the way in which these sensitive data are collected? I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think this is something that I'm struggling with in the field.
Yeah.
So
no, thank you very much. I think I get what you mean. Think about creative destruction and the evolution of money exchange throughout the presumption lens. Okay, you know, since few years ago in Italy, being a bank teller was a quite good profession. Okay, I mean, you have social status, you have a decent wage, and so on and so forth. What was happening? because of technological evolution and creative destruction, consumer, or it's better to say prosumer, are eroding their job. Me, you, and everyone is doing their own bank teller because they pick money at the ATM if you use them, or any way you manage the website of your web banking service, you know? So that's a creative destruction we are talking about. And that's this happened thanks to what? To the free labor of the prosumer, that in order to get an advantage on efficiency, makes obsolete a knowledge and the technology, basically the skill of the teller. That's the point. Vice versa, it's also true that we can say that the skill of the teller that are basically medium average skill are somehow ejected from the job market, and because of that. But by the other side, we need what? Fintech engineer, so we need more skilled position. But these skilled position are way less than the average skilled position dropped off by the market. That's a point, you know. And secondly, throughout the analysis of the economic evolution of you know, saving and exchanges, I think that cryptocurrency are the perfect example of, or are the application of platform digital prosumption. You need, in order to validate a cryptocurrency certificate, you know, you need to have to put your calculator on a grid to verify line of codes, to do certain activity that basically are putting your asset at disposal of the economic system. And that's become, you know, the sharing, the idea of sharing your asset, your resources, becomes the core element in the value creation process. You know what I mean? Thank you very much for your question. It was very engaging.
Thank you, Pierre. I think also, you know, that kind of brought us back to the discussion from Anne's presentation yesterday, especially your point of, you know, who is doing what kind of work when you compare it across these epochs, like that example she gave of once these automated decisions were there in the state decision-making process, the number of government servants went down. And what sorts of job profiles are coming up as a substitute? It just doesn't match the numbers. That's pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, like in the hybrid reality, digital unemployment will be definitely a thing.
Yeah. So that brings us also back to that point that Rajoshi brought up, you know, about you have oversupply, but also the periodic crises that Marx was talking about. Perhaps it's going to come back in a big way, and we're just waiting for that to happen.
Absolutely.
Let's see if there are other questions or comments.
Looks like we have come to an end.
Okay, in that case, thank you so much for a very engaging talk. And from my end, thank you for all the really interesting ideas that we got also from the audience, because this is certainly a series of interactions that we hope to continue over the scope of not just this year, but also going forward. Pierre, any famous last words that you want to end with?
Thank you very much for your time and attention. Really appreciated that you joined us in this amazing project. For sure, we will be back to you with some other interesting proposal of seminar. You can check and log on our website. All the video are online, and it's a pretty amazing project. I really wish to thank Benedetta Ciroli Polizzi, that she is the graphic artist that is realizing for us those amazing graphics that are loved by every one of our speakers. So
Grazie,
thank you very
Benedetta.
much, Benedetta.
Thank you, Benedetta.
Thank you. Ci vediamo.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Okay,
All right then.
that's it.
See you soon.
Gillette, I end the meeting, okay?
Okay, I'm not sure what happens to the recording. So maybe
So you have to stop recording, and as soon as I close the meeting, record.